I don't know about you, but this bull run we're in is exhausting. Every day I'm setting my alarm just a little bit earlier and then a little bit earlier just to give myself enough time to work through everything on my list, stay on top of the day's stories and track all the new developments. Research, write, shoot, edit, repeat. And with all the restrictions currently placed on us, I don't mind saying it's getting to be a little much. So I found myself gravitating more and more towards indexes as a way of lightening the load, at least from an investment perspective. After all, if it's good enough for the Oracle of Omaha, might there be something here for us? Now in this episode, we're going to look at indexes, both centralized and decentralized, before ending our journey at the mysterious Degen Token. But first, I need a nap. Wake me up when the titles are over. Before we get going, we need to jump into this channel's comments section where we had a lovely bit of FUD from Blake Appletini. Anyone else get the vibe that this guy is a paid actor? Like, something seems off. When that other lady that also sounds like a paid actor and only has like 160 subs interviewed him, he went on about just wanting to tell stories, like it's all he had to say. A bunch of highbrow marketing and PR speak. It's really strange, and I'm starting to question any project this guy has ever talked about. Also, like the production quality is so high, but there are like no views. It's like this is being bankrolled by a PR/marketing team. All of this makes my con artist alarms go off like crazy. Very, very, very suspicious. Normally, I would just let this one go as low-level trolling, but it speaks to something that's actually quite important to Camilla, the chiefess at the Defiant, and that is journalistic integrity. No, I'm not a paid actor. No one would pay me to act. I am a paid filmmaker, and filmmakers tell stories. Now, if you don't like the way I do it, then that's fine. You're under no obligation to watch, but this is my style of storytelling, and I'm not going to apologize for it. Secondly, the Defiant does have sponsors for its written content, but as of right now, the video content is unsponsored. The equipment I use here in the studio was all purchased by me, it's owned by me, and no, there is no PR or marketing team involved. Now look, I used to direct TV commercials, I've even directed a feature film.
The variety and easy customization of the Saeco Excelsis are perfect for a day filled with the same.
I like having the toys, I like having lights, I like making stuff look good. It's just the way I make content. And we don't use any cheap tricks to boost views, we just rely on organic growth. And yeah, I used to work for Harmony, and we co-produced the Defiant weekly show, but that contract ended in January. But the very fact that I worked for a Layer 1 protocol should give you some confidence that I do have at least some idea what I'm talking about. Now, in the light of all of that transparency, one of the index projects on the agenda today is one I actually do own a small quantity of tokens in, and that's DPI. So let's leave it there and on with the show. Oh, and yeah, get subscribed, hit the like button, all that stuff. You know what to do. So, this information overload problem is very real. There's currently 6,251 tokens listed on CoinGecko, of which 208 are listed as DeFi specifically, but there are a whole bunch more that aren't even listed there. Deciding where to look, what to invest in, what particular game to play can become completely overwhelming. The psychologist Barry Schwartz wrote a book about this. It's called The Paradox of Choice. And in it he says, autonomy and freedom of choice are critical to our well-being, and choice is critical to freedom and autonomy. Nonetheless though, modern Americans have more choice than any group of people ever has before, and thus presumably more freedom and autonomy, but we don't seem to be benefiting from it psychologically. So the more choice you have, the less happy you are. It's ironic, isn't it? Now, if we come back to that Buffett quote, he talks of know-nothing investors. And I wonder how many currently investing in crypto would be self-aware enough to call themselves that. The fact is, in traditional investing, many smart and well-respected voices have long called indexes the smartest place to put your money. Invest in low-turnover, passively managed index funds and stay away from profit-driven investment management organizations. The mutual fund industry is a colossal failure, resulting from its systematic exploitation of individual investors as funds extract enormous sums from investors in exchange for providing a shocking disservice. Excessive management fees take their toll, and manager profits dominate fiduciary responsibility. That is David F. Swenson, the Chief Investment Officer at Yale University. Now, you could kind of substitute high gas fees for management fees here, maybe. But anyway, if we are brave enough to recognize that most of us are indeed know-nothing investors, then what are our options? Well, I'm going to tell you. But first, just in case you weren't sure, here's a quick primer on indexes in traditional markets. Index funds are financial vehicles that pool investors' money into a portfolio of securities that mirror a particular market index. And because they're passively managed, index funds have low fees. They're diversified by design and are relatively low risk, but the gains tend to be slow as well. So when Vanguard Group founder Jack Bogle introduced the first index fund back in 1976, it was largely ridiculed by others in the industry as un-American for its central purpose, which was to provide individuals with a broad-based, cost-effective way to invest in the market. Its portfolio didn't cherry-pick stocks, but just bought the ones in the Standard & Poor's 500 index, or otherwise known as the S&P 500. And the thinking was investing in a representative sampling of the stock market overall would ultimately yield better returns than trying to beat the market by picking individual winners. Now, despite the initial scorn, the concept caught on, and today there are hundreds of index funds and they have become a staple of many a retail investor's portfolio. The assets under management in indexes were worth over $4 trillion back in 2019, and that was the first time they had surpassed those of traditional actively managed funds. As prices move, automatically rebalancing indices take profits from a performing asset and move it into an asset that has not performed as well, available at a relative discount. And over time, these micro moves cumulatively add up to significant gains. And this is especially noticeable in highly volatile markets like cryptocurrencies. And it's also important to know that indices on average outperform in both bear and bull markets. Now, given the extreme signal noise in crypto and the increased institutional interest we've seen in the last 6 months, it really isn't a surprise to see an avalanche of crypto indexes being announced, allowing traditional investors an easy way to join the party. CBOE plans to launch indexes in Q2 this year, and IHS Markit, the financial information provider, is known to be considering it. I love this quote from the CEO, Lance Ugler. "Every millennial that works for the company thinks there should be more crypto products offered." Of course they do. But that's way out there in the world of the traditional guys and girls. What about us, crypto enlightened? What options do we have? Well, perps for a start.
What do you writers always call them, perps?
Now, Binance launched a DeFi perp futures index back in August 2020 at the height of DeFi summer. 50x leverage available and a rounded selection of the best known DeFi projects. FTX has also got you covered with a whole host of different indices, including, hilariously, a shitcoin one, allowing you and me to literally buy shit. And you can find the makeup of the index on the dedicated page here. And of course, what's interesting about all of this is, okay, yes, this is a decentralized finance channel, and those products are not decentralized. But fear not, because here you also have a growing number of options. And this is a good thing, because with gas prices so high right now, just getting in and out of a buffet of DeFi projects is going to end up being quite expensive. There are more and more of these coming onto the market, and because this is DeFi, more often than not, once you've bought an index token, there are then more opportunities to stake and earn as an LP on top of the token's appreciation. And it can also handily sidestep impermanent loss. So let's take a look. So we're going to start with SDeFi, which is an index token developed by the synthetics community that represents the price performance of a basket of leading tokens in the decentralized finance space. Now, SDeFi can only be purchased on the Synthetic exchange with Synthetics' native stablecoin, SUSD. But as SDeFi grows more popular with investors, that enhances the value proposition of SUSD and the exchange itself, since these are the only means to obtain SDeFi. Now, SDeFi rebalances automatically, so traders have to exit from their positions beforehand if they want to avoid migrating to a new portfolio. But the rebalance proposals are voted on by the community itself, and you get plenty of warning before they do. So moving on now to Pi DAO, which offers a few different flavors of pies. their word for index. First, there's DeFi plus L and DeFi plus S, which represent large cap and small cap DeFi projects. Now, which tokens were included in DeFi plus L and DeFi plus S were chosen through 2 rounds of community votes on Discord. There are 6 assets in each, but the pie that got everyone talking was the DeFi plus plus pie, which is effectively an index of the other 2 indexes and contains 13 industry disrupting assets. Just like DeFi plus L and DeFi plus S, DeFi plus plus automatically rebalances. It has no streaming fee, and you can then stake those tokens to earn dough. Next up is the DeFi Pulse Index, which is a capitalization-weighted index that tracks the performance of decentralized financial assets across the market. Now, it aims to track projects in DeFi that have significant usage and show a commitment to ongoing maintenance and development. And there's a list of 4 token inclusion criteria. Firstly, the token's descriptive characteristics. The token must be available on the Ethereum blockchain, for instance. The token must be associated with a decentralized finance protocol or dApp listed on DeFi Pulse. The token must be a bearer instrument. Now, this one's interesting because it excludes wrapped tokens, tokenized derivatives, synthetic assets, or tokens that are tied to physical assets, and tokens that represent claims on other tokens. They also look at the token's supply characteristics and the project's traction characteristics. So the project must be widely considered to be building a useful protocol or product. And the last category is protocol's user safety characteristics. So security professionals must have reviewed the protocol to determine that security best practices have been followed to maintain user assets safe under different circumstances. And there's a funky formula for calculating the index value, which looks like this. And if I read this correctly, yes, the index is rebalanced monthly after a determination phase, which occurs the 3rd week of every month. And like PiDAO, you can also stake your DPI as an LP and earn index tokens. Now, full disclosure, I actually hold DPI tokens myself. The reason for that, don't need to go into, but I do. Moving on is PIPT from PowerPool, which is a protocol for pooling governance tokens such as Comp, BAL, Lend, Wi-Fi, BZRX, Acro, and many, many others. And it allows token holders to lend, pool, borrow governance tokens, get income from them, and accumulate governance power in protocols based on Ethereum. Now, they offer 3 different index products: the ASI index, which is an acronym of Ava, Synthetics, Sushi, and Yearn; a Yearn ecosystem index, so you can bet on Andre and the Chronauts there; and the jewel in the crown, the Power Index, a decentralized ETF-like DeFi index consisting of 8 different governance tokens. Now, they describe PIPT as a magic token, allowing you to own future cash flows where constituent tokens are placed into stakings within the relevant protocol. Now, all income from these activities is distributed to the PIPT holders, and Power Index uses all pooled tokens for voting. Plus, it looks like they're planning to offer a new product allowing you to short a portfolio of 8 tokens using derivatives based on PIPT, which will create more opportunities for hedging. A good thing, I think. But there's more. On January the 20th, Power Index announced version 2 of the Power Index, which will create, in their words, unlimited ETFs, or a product that allows users to create complex, automatically traded portfolios. Now, I've left a link to the announcement post in the description below, but once you really start digging into these indexes, you see so much rapid innovation happening. It's really fascinating. So next up is the DeFi plus 5 from Indexed.finance, which is a project focused on the development of passive portfolio management strategies for Ethereum. Index is managed by the holders of the governance token NDX, which is used to vote on proposals for protocol updates and high-level index management, such as the definition of market sectors and the creation of new management strategies. Now, the project launched into beta at the end of last year, and there are a few different products available. You can mine NDX by staking CC10, DeFi 5, or the Uniswap LP tokens for their respective WETH pairs. And Indexed is really a great springboard to launch us into what might be the most intriguing index project I've found so far. But it does mean heading into a darker place altogether, a world of clowns. And no, I am not joking. It's time to introduce Red Phone Crypto. For the last 6 months or so, one DeFi voice has found a kind of cult following on Twitter. It might be the way she writes. It might be the deep knowledge of the space, or it might just be that people will follow anything if it speaks with enough conviction. Nonetheless, Redphone is a well-respected voice in DeFi, and over the weekend he announced the Degen Token, a community-driven index of small-cap tokens journeying from obscurity to blue chipdom. It will make it easy for everyone to be a degen without having to put in degen hours and have a degen history of effing around in this space for years. The tweet thread goes on to explain how smart minds from across the space collaborated to find the most suitable projects and the best governance model. It will equal a basket of 10 of the fastest growing, most promising small cap tokens in crypto, and it will run on indexed.finance, which is the NDX token. I think for many of us, there's always this moment where we see a project suddenly take off and wish we could have been there at the start, at that genesis point, because obviously that's where you stand to make the most money. And that is what this token is aiming to capture. For anyone who wishes to take what is obviously also the greatest risk, but the early bird, as they say, catches the worm. And in this case, the worm could be very fat and very juicy. So Redphone Crypto is anonymous, like completely and utterly anonymous. And when I reached out to him to talk, he set some firm conditions. I couldn't use his voice at all. And since this is video, I offered to get an actor to play him. So I called on Hollywood actor Simon Wan, who you might recall being the artist behind the rug pull. And because he's basically one of the coolest people I know, he's kind of the perfect choice to be the voice of Redphone Crypto. So Redphone, why did you start sharing your thoughts and stories on Twitter?
For work and personal reasons, I need to stay anonymous. Not too long ago, I was complaining about my situation to a VC. I told him I was full of ideas and opinions on crypto, that I literally dream about crypto, but I didn't have an outlet for my thoughts. He said I should think about going anonymous. I thought about it, and I thought it sounded stupid. But the idea wouldn't go away. It took a long time to sink in, like 6 months. But going anonymous was one of the best decisions of my life. It made me realize how much our identity gets in the way of what we're willing to say publicly. It distorts everything. Twitter lets me share without that distortion.
So the thing is, it's kind of easy to dismiss crypto influencers as just clout chasers, but your voice is really different. What's important to you about the way you relay your stories?
I don't consider myself an influencer, or at least I try not to. Our egos are so tied to our names and identities, they're like a dirty oil staining everything important that comes out of our mouths. I have this one little space on Twitter where I get to say whatever I want. It gets harder as you get more followers for some reason. You start forming a second ego around your anonymous identity. And it made me realize that we're all just ego piled on top of ego. We're ego onions. I try to remember that and I fight it. I also just try to remember that most of the world is just waking up to crypto. They're where we were years ago. They're discovering this magic for the first time. And I don't want to get them into shit coins so I can make a few dollars. I want them to always remember that this technology can change humanity's fate. It can make us freer and more equal. It can lift up the people who have been getting crushed by the inflation and bank fees and payday loans. It's not a given that it will succeed either. So I want to remind people of that. Their decisions matter.
Let's turn to the Degen token. How did that idea come about?
In December, I did a Twitter post asking people to name their top 10 picks for 2021. There was no prize or financial incentive. More than 140 people weighed in, including a lot of my favorite people on Twitter. I tallied up all the votes and came up with what I called the Degen 10. It was a sort of hive mind index. Lots of people weighed in on the thread and said they wished it was a token. A community formed around that to toss around how we could make that happen. Oxbay did a lot of the heavy lifting. He organized a Discord and set up some calls with projects to figure out how to turn it into a token. And what we ended up with was Degen. We stayed faithful to all the tokens people initially submitted on Twitter, but we did boot out the large caps and bumped up some of the smaller caps. We did that to avoid overlap with a lot of other indices out there. We came up with the idea of putting an upper bound on the token's market cap at $2 billion. If a token exceeds that, It gets replaced by something smaller and more degenerate.
You're building on index.finance, NDX. What is it about them that makes them so appealing?
There's something about NDX reminds me of Wi-Fi. It's got a community of really smart, really passionate people working on it. And one of the co-founders, Dylan, he just sounds like a builder when you talk to him. He's written his own EVM. I think of him like a walking Ethereum node. I love Cohen too. He's at the heart of the community. He runs free workshops to get newbies into DeFi through his website, cryptotesters.com. And after talking to them and seeing that they'd gotten some seed money from Mali or Hedgig, that really sealed the deal for me.
Okay, crucial question there. How do we know you're not going to rug pull?
I have exactly zero control over the index. I just co-wrote a proposal to get it launched on NDX. It's really a community thing. But everything on Index happens on-chain. Everything's open source. There were certainly risks involved, though. One of the bigger ones we were worried about at first was the fact that Index buys the underlying components and balancer. If one of the underlying tokens dumps to zero after a hack or infinite mint, the rebalancing could get out of whack. The Index could buy a bunch of worthless tokens. They've developed a circuit breaker to mitigate that risk, though. Still, I can only say I'll be there long in it from day one. Hopefully, I'm not the only one.
So you obviously see some value in indexes. What is the value of an index to you personally?
Now, you might outperform an index if you're really well informed, but not many people can spend 40 hours a week studying crypto. They know a lot about, say, 3 or 4 projects, but beyond that, it's too hard to visualize the entire landscape. Degen is harnessing the wisdom of crowds to find the next big projects. It's a way to capture alpha without being glued to Discord and Telegram. It also lowers your risk a bit by spreading out your bets.
So I know in your feed, you like to encourage people and tell us how exciting this all is. Do you have a final message for those coming into DeFi?
The banking industry has stagnated for decades. We're witnessing it get reborn in the space of a few short years. It's a generational type event, and we're lucky to be alive for it. If I could give one piece of advice, it would be to keep an open mind. You got to keep learning and challenging yourself. It's too early to get dogmatic or to fall in love with a single project. People talk about DeFi being in a bubble. I say it's a steam. Maybe even smaller. Maybe like a bear taking a pee behind a tree in the woods. But somewhere, uphill, there's a dam, and it's creaking and fracturing. We all hear it. We all know it's going to burst, and when it does, some of those DeFi protocols will hold trillions of dollars. We're so early. We get to help determine which protocols win and which ones lose. So make sure you pick the good ones. The ones that are fair and open to all. The last thing we want is to rebuild the current banking system on blockchains. That system took advantage of us for too long. Let's build one that's free and fair and open to everyone who will come.
Honestly, there's not a lot more I can add after those words, so I won't. But I hope this was a useful primer on DeFi indexes. By the looks of it, there is so much more innovation to come. Now, most of these are powered by Balancer, and version 2 of that protocol is just around the corner. So who knows what's ahead of us this year. I will tell you this though. If there is a chance that I can claw back just an hour extra sleep every day, then it's totally worth it. Index we trust? Maybe. This was the Defiant.